Okay. Tomorrow we're going to cover graphs and equations. And here's my graph. We have to just analyze. See you, Corey. You have to analyze what my graph's doing and make an equation from it. Okay. So let's first talk about amplitude. This is my y equals, and this is a full Monty equation. Everything's in here. Amplitude times either sine or cosine times b, and I've got a phase shift, so that gives me the parentheses, x plus or minus c, and then outside that's anything in parentheses of a function is going to be horizontal, left or right. Plus is left, minus right, and then outside of that is your plus or minus a d value, that's your vertical. A and b, A is a stretch or compression vertically, B is your accordion this way, a horizontal stretch or compression, and where right here the C or D, those are phase shifts where it's going to go. The whole graph moves left or right or up or down. Okay, let's find our amplitude. Remember, max minus min divided by 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Minus my min is 1 divided by 2, and that's an absolute value. 8 over 2, 4. That's my amplitude. I just got my amplitude, so we're good there. Period. Here's the neat way of finding my period is go from, let's find like a max to a max or a min to a min. Well, here's my max. Okay? And every 2 dashes is pi halves, so let's count our pi halves. Pi halves, pi and a half, 2, 2 and a half, 3, 3 and a half, 4. That's my period. My period equals 4 pi. Okay, notice how this is a continuous cycle, but we hit this max, go all the way down, back up to where we started from, and then we start repeating the cycle again as it comes down there, okay? All right, so my period is 4 pi, but I can find b. Remember, period equals 2 pi over b. All right, so let me rewrite that. So my period equals 2 pi over b. Well, if my period is 4 pi, 2 pi divided by what gets me 4? Well, remember, this divided by this gets me this, so better yet, b times 4 pi gets me 2 pi. Okay? So b times 4 pi equals 2 pi. What times 4 gets you 2? 1/2. Okay? Alright, so I just figured out what b was based on my period. I could go minimum to minimum. Again, here's 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. Min to minimum. Okay? So I've just got my b is 1/2. Now, what's very important about understanding amplitude, okay, finding the middle of the graph. Remember, notice when our normal cosine sine graphs, cosine blue, sine red, notice how the middle is right on the x-axis. We go up 1, we come down 1. My amplitude here is just 1. Okay? 1 and -1, but my amplitude, so everything, this x-axis is right in the middle of the graph, okay? What's right in the middle of this graph? Where is my middle? Okay, it's got to be right in the middle between where? Of 1 and 9. It's the average, right? Okay? It's right in between. I got to go up, remember our amplitude went up 4 and down 4, okay? So if I go from the bottom, I go up 4, I'm right to that middle, right? From 1 plus 4 is 5. And from my max of 9 down 4 from my amplitude gets me right to that middle. So my middle is right here, okay, at 5. So remember, that normal graph started, the middle of that graph is usually the x-axis. Well, it shot up to being right here at 5. Okay, so that's a vertical shift of that graph. You see how the middle's right here. That's a vertical shift of plus 5. Okay? So now, let's take a look. Now we got to figure out if it's a sine or cosine graph. We can make it either one. We can phase shift it enough to where it's a cosine or sine. You'll have to do that tomorrow. Okay? Make a phase shift to make it cosine or sine. But for right now, pretty simple. What graph starts off, if this is my middle, pretend this is where my new x-axis is, goes up and then down. Remember, cosine starts out here and comes down. So this looks more like a sine graph. But remember, for sine graphs, like in red, that middle of the graph, that 0 part, is right here on the y-axis. We kind of moved. Okay. Normally that would be here, right? It moved what? Here's half a pi. That's pi half. So that's a quarter pi. So it moved right a quarter pi. How do I do plus or minus for right? Remember, right is going to be minus. Minus goes right. It's backwards. So x minus pi quarters. And we said what? It looks like the sine, right? And we've got the plus 5. We solved our d. Okay? So there's our function. 4 sine, amplitude 4 sine 1/2 x minus pi over 4 plus 5. Alright? You might have had something like going down this way. You might have to figure out some more complicated ones where it's minus cosine. You gotta, hey, if you notice how it's kind of backwards and you need to flip it back up, then you need to put maybe a negative. So this is not super easy, but it's not super difficult either. If I wanted to make it a cosine, I had to do what? I need to get this max point all the way back here. Okay? And that would be a cosine graph where I'm starting off, we're right at the max values right here. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 and a quarter. So that's 4, so that's pi and a quarter. I would make it cosine x plus pi and a quarter is 5 pi over 4. 5 quarter pies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And that would make my cosine graph. Okay? So remember the big thing that we covered today. The biggest thing when we go from that we did on the graphs today was make sure you, when you have this, make sure you get your period affected first. Okay? 2 pi over b is your period. And then do your spatial relationships and where your zeros and ones are, where the middle of each graph are, and spatial relationships. And then you can do your amplitude and your phase shifts and your vertical shifts. Okay, that's it. Please watch the video.